All right, welcome back to another episode. And on today's episode, alongside co-host Bianca Léger, we interview a holistic love coach, business mentor, and creator of the Inner Edge, a 10-week transformational program for online coaches to help grow their businesses and to help create deeper transformations for their clients. Welcome to the Winner Circle, Hannah Deindorfer.
Thank you,
Welcome to the
Derek. I'm so happy to be here.
It's been a while, and since we last connected, I started these conversations. Welcome to the Winner Circle. It's all about uplifting, inspiring, and empowering others. And all my time with you, I felt those vibes, and I'm so happy to have you on this show and this conversation with Bianca and I.
That
Yeah.
feels so good to be here and to know that, you're someone I met in passing on it like a few years ago, and like the impression that I created for you was so positive and meaningful that you wanted to continue to stay in that, and like that means the world to me to like have that reflected back to me. So thank you so much for that.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. The first question that we ask everyone is a really positive one, and that's Hannah. What do you love about your world right now?
Oh, so much. Um, I think the thing that I love the most about my world right now is that I have created for the first time in my life relationships that are so intimate and uplifting and so meaningful, like ones with my friends and my partner, where we truly are in favor of each other's growth as individuals, and the friendship and being so real and honest above everything else and holding each other accountable to just the highest level of self-care and self-expression and play. And it just feels really, really good to be around people like that and to know that that's a reflection of myself. So that's honestly something I love so much about my life right now.
Hmm. So there's many roles that you play in the bio that I read of you. Um, and overarching amongst all those roles that you play and your friendships, your relationships is your mission. Your mission here in this reality plane. And that's could be always changing. But right here, right now, what would you say your mission is so that we can have a better understanding of who the person that you are?
Oh, my mission is to it's twofold. It's like first to create the highest level of alignment and peace for myself internally, and to be in a state of loving myself first, always, and then outwardly to be able to bring that same level of peace and creativity and self-expression and freedom to every person that I have an opportunity to impact. So whether it's through my social media or through my clients or through my friendships and relationships, like just being able to encourage people to be themselves fully and trust themselves.
Oh, I love the reminder there that it's like it starts with you and how aligned you are within yourself so that you can actually provide that to others. I love that so much. It's a good
Mhm.
reminder.
Hmm.
For sure.
Yeah, and as you mentioned,
Mhm.
it's so important that this process starts with you. So let's talk about how this started with you and your origins to where you are now and how you became a coach and um, how that came to be.
Are you ready for a long story?
As
I
as
am.
long as as long as you're ready to share.
Okay, amazing. All right,
I've
so
got my yeah.
buckle up. Here we go.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a very small town in Michigan. Like I graduated with like 80 kids, like that kind of small town where everybody knows each other and everybody knows everybody's business, and nobody leaves their front doors locked. And um, I had like a feeling of like very normal childhood, or like standard like TV childhood up until I was like 12. And when I was 12 years old, my dad had his first really intense manic episode. And he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and it completely changed my life in the way that it created this turmoil in my family and this division in my family where I took on this role of caretaker for my dad and like emotional support for him, and was like driving him to doctor's appointments when I was like 13, and then also was like very much in this caretaking role for my younger siblings as well. and feeling very disconnected from my mom because there was just so much conflict. And then around the same time, I got into my first romantic relationship, which lasted 3 years, and it was extremely abusive, like very controlling, emotionally, physically, verbally abusive. My first sexual experience was non-consensual. I've never shared this publicly until right now, but I was molested when I was 16 by a teacher in my high school as well. And like it was so interesting because like if you were to look at the life that I was presenting to my peers and to everyone around me outside of my close relationships, I was this like very happy, free person, like got perfect grades, like great athlete. And like inside, like in my home life and in my relationships, everything was just the opposite of that. I was isolated and afraid and confused. And when I went to college, I only moved 45 minutes away, even though I had like letters from Ivy League schools and stuff, because I was like, I have to stay here and take care of my dad. And so I'd built up all this resentment and felt so out of control. And that ended up like manifesting for me in an eating disorder. When I was 20, I starved myself and was almost hospitalized for anorexia and depression. And then I attempted suicide when I was 21. So like those 10 years of my life, from like 11 or 12 up until like 21, were just ticking off every box of like pain and suffering that I could for myself in some way. It was like I like to like kind of fantasize that when I was like 12 years old, there was like my higher self came to me and was like, yo, I'm gonna offer you a deal right now. I'm gonna offer you, if you want to go through 10 years of absolute hell, where you will experience the depth of pain and loneliness and suffering and feel like you want to die and feel like you want to escape everything and have no idea what's going on and just get to the worst place ever. If you are willing to do that, I will trade you, if you make it through, if you survive, I will trade you that time for the rest of your life being the absolute best ever. If you want to sign up for that, and then get the rest of your life to be incredible and free and support other people and just grow. Are you down, little you? Are you down, 12-year-old? And like that 12-year-old me was just like, fuck yeah, let's go. Like I can do it. And so after I attempted suicide, I started going to therapy, and God bless you, Mary Beth Atwell. Like she was like the best therapist I could have landed with, because she really started to help me see that like my life was in my hands. Like it was my responsibility to choose how I cared for myself and like what thoughts were happening inside of my head, and like my emotional state and my physical well-being, like all of those things were absolutely in my own power, and I could choose that. And just like she showed me, there was one day where she showed me, like, cause I had it in my head that like, if someone was like fucked up mentally, it was like just gonna be a forever thing. And she showed me this video of brain synapses and how the brain creates these like thought patterns through firing the same synapses over and over and over and over. And then on the brain scan, it showed that same person who had this like very deeply entrenched brain synapses pattern firing a new synapses and then building a new pattern internally in their brain. And she was like, that person did that intentionally. They chose a new thought pattern to have. They chose a new reality. And that just, I was so angry at that in some way, because I was like, fuck, now I have to like take responsibility for this. But it was also like so empowering, because I was like, well, now I have no choice. Now it's actually like, I have no option except to take that into my hands and choose something better for myself. And it doesn't matter how long it takes, like I'm going to be well. And yeah, that was like a huge turning point for me.
Can we just take a moment and acknowledge the strength of your soul? Wow, like I love the image that you bring up of your higher self talking to your 12-year-old self. And I definitely believe that like our souls choose some type of path to make us evolve. And yeah, I believe that like 1000% that the reason why you can help so many people now is because you know what it's like to be right on the other end of the spectrum. So it's like that experience really grants you an opportunity to be of help to so many people. And also, I just really want to acknowledge you for how strong you are for opening up and being so vulnerable and honest with us right now. And I just feel really, really privileged that you're sharing that with us. So thank you.
My pleasure. Like, I feel like part of that happening also is like, I feel a sense of deep responsibility to share my story too, because I remember being in that state and feeling so alone, like no one else could ever understand what I was going through. And if this allows for someone else to be like, wow, she gets it, like she knows what my experience is like and doesn't feel so alone, it's 100% worth it to just keep sharing and keep being of service in that way. Like, even if I never like helped a person, but all I did was share my story, it's like enough for that to happen.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Whew. So we know where you came from. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to find out how you got to moving and get to like where you are now.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Are you ready for more?
Yes, please.
I am.
Okay, part two of the story, which has a lot happier tone to it. So I started going to therapy and really getting support for myself. I made my first real friend my senior year of college, which was incredible. And when I finished my 4 years at college, I had another like choice point in the road where it was like, okay, there's a job offer here in Michigan that's like a couple hours from my parents' house and pays decent money. Or there's this internship in California where you can go know no one and work for absolute garbage pay for no guaranteed job. And I was like, this is a fucking no-brainer. Like, of course I'm gonna like go and like take this risk and like just leap into faith in myself. And so I moved to California. And once I landed there, I I was working for the software company and was making like $500 a month, living in someone's garage for like 3 months, and just like so scrappy, just barely making it. And really at this time also dove into like spirituality and meditation and all of these like philosophers. I love Eckhart Tolle. He's the first like I guess I don't know if you'd even call him a philosopher, but anyway, his first spiritual teacher that really changed my life. And I like went headfirst into the spirituality space, and then was also like taking on different mentors and coaches while I was working in this software job for 3 years. And during that time, I was like getting more and more woke, I guess, and like waking up to the fact that like I was living in a box, like I was working in this fucking cube every single day. And I'm like, this is so at odds with like all the things that I want for my life, and just doesn't make sense to be this like robot and cog in the machine. And so after 3 years at that job, I was at this talk by this artist, and his name is Gene, and he was just like, it just came at the perfect moment where he was like, if you are not doing everything that you want for your life, if you are not fully living the way that you want to live, that is your responsibility to change that. You only have like this moment right now. You are not guaranteed any future. Like, and he gave his whole story about how he was a struggling artist and he made it work. And I was just like, okay, this is the final straw. I'm quitting my job. And so I quit my very comfortable software job to go be his mentee. I worked as an artist and freelance graphic designer for a little while. And then I also at the same time started taking on coaching clients for free. And so after about 6 months to a year of that, I moved to Austin. And
let me ask you a little question first.
yeah,
When
go
you
ahead.
started coaching people for free, are these people just approached you, or you kind of offered like, hey, I have skills, I have things I want to help you with? How did that start?
So I started on my social media talking about my journey like a couple years before
Mhm.
I quit my job. And I was really just to like share my story, share inspirational content, share the concepts I was learning, and just like being a space of like positivity and sharing. And then after a while, I had a few people that were close to me start asking me, like, what are you doing with this? We're interested in it. And then I got enough balls through like the mentors that I had to be like, I would like to coach you in this. You don't have to pay me anything, but I just want to try this out. And if it goes well, I would just love a testimonial. And that just started snowballing into a space where I had this like cushy contract with one of my freelance people, and they went off the deep end, fired all their freelancers, and I was again like back at ground zero with like no money and no money coming in. And I was like, okay, this is like another opportunity to redefine myself and choose actually what I want to do. And after that was when I went fully into coaching. I was like, I'm not going to do freelance design anymore. I'm just going to focus on building my coaching business. And that was almost 4 years ago now, and it's just been like a continuous evolution of that online business since then. So yeah, moved to Austin,
Wow.
and it's been fantastic.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's the
So
end for now. But there's more specifics. You can ask more specifics and go for it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned having to overcome like 10 really tumultuous, like high and low years to get to where you are now, like in the absolute best life ever. What does that absolute best life ever look like? And what does that comprise of for you?
Oh, for me right now, I feel like I'm really living in that space of like, this is exactly what I would want to be doing. And what it looks
Yeah.
like is like I have total freedom and flexibility in my career and my work hours. I can choose who I want to serve and how I want to serve them and how I want to show up for them and how much I want to do that. I have so much travel in my life right now. I'm going to Mexico in a week from now, and I've just been able to like be very flexible with my work as I travel, all like wherever I want. I have incredible friendships and relationships, like people who really, really love me, and I love them so much. And things with my family are in a so much better place. Like there's always for me, that's the space where I get to do the most work. But like, I love my mom, I love my dad, I'm in a place of peace with them. And also, like, in my physical body, I have never felt more at home. Like, I was someone who had an eating disorder and hated myself and would cry in the shower looking at my body, hating myself. Like, I genuinely take care of myself so well and love myself so much. And like, that's like every area of my life feels so full. Like, and I'm living in a
Yeah.
beautiful home, like a dream home for me. It's like just every space
Yeah.
you can imagine I've filled with love.
Mm-hmm.
As you're saying this, I have like the big word abundance, like stapled all over. Like it just feels like you've been nourishing yourself on every single level.
Mhm.
Um, it's amazing. I love hearing about it. It's beautiful.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Mm-hmm. And despite so much going right, there will always be resistance. And that's the thing Stephen Pressfield describes, that negative force in that world that prevents us from fulfilling our dreams. And then that's going to come up to us again and again throughout our journey. So, what strategies have you developed to overcome that resistance when it arises? That resistance that prevents you from sitting down, doing your work, from sharing, from being vulnerable, for going for that workout, for going to meet with friends, whatever that resistance may manifest itself in. How have you learned to deal with resistance, and what are your primary self care techniques that keep you who
Mhm.
you are?
I think, like, honestly, for me, it's been a process of developing this muscle of just always doing the honorable thing, no matter what, for myself. Like, and making that automatic. like making it no longer a choice of whether or not I'm going to do the workout, or making it no longer a choice of whether or not I'm going to have a hard conversation. And it's not even a choice of whether or not I'm going to show up and serve. Like, and that automatic like installation of like I will always do what's honorable. And when I don't, I'm just going to get back into like what's the next best honorable choice and not make myself wrong for it. I think like that development of that muscle is something that everyone can do over time. And it can start, I recommend to my clients starting in like very, very small ways of cleaning that up. So it's like, if you like don't brush your teeth every day and floss, start there. Like that's a very easy thing to do. If you don't do your laundry or put it away automatically, like if you still have like a pile of laundry, just take care of that, just clean that up, like, and just make these like very small micro adjustments in your patterns and habits, and that will really allow for the bigger things to become more and more automatic. As far as like my self-care goes, it's variable, but like depending on the day and how much time I want to spend on it, but there are definitely non-negotiables for me. I've been journaling every day for the past 5 years. I have like 30 notebooks just filled with 3 pages. I read the book The Artist's Way like 5 years ago and started doing morning pages. And that for me is just non-negotiable. I don't miss a day for that, because that is my space to like take whatever clutter is like happening in my head and just splat it onto a page and just let it go, and so I can be at peace the rest of my day. I meditate sometimes, and like whenever it feels like I have stuff that I'm just like being a little chaotic. And then other routines for me are like working out is like pretty constant as well. It's like taking care of my physical body and eating nourishing foods. So.
Yeah, those are all really good tips. And before showing up here, I saw you talk about another strategy on your Instagram, which was about part work for overcoming resistance. And I thought that was so interesting, because it's something that I have practiced also at a time where I was like experiencing so much conflict within myself, also with eating disorders. And I was like, what the fuck is going on inside this brain? Like, how do I come to be at peace with one? Like, I'm one, like, shouldn't we be like moving as one here? But yeah, I don't know if you want to like quickly share what the parts work is.
Dude, I totally can. Yeah. I think like, so how I imagine it to be is that inside of us, there are all of these different parts. Like this is from like the branch of therapy called internal family systems is the branch of therapy that informs this. So inside of us, there's all these different voices, all these different parts, all these different desires, and many of them are in conflict with each other, right? So we have a desire to lay around and watch movies, and we also have a desire to go to the park and play with our dog and be active. That's like a very small conflicting desire. But then we also have these bigger conflicting desires that are primarily driven by desire to be safe and secure in the same, and a desire to be expressed and courageous and adventurous and go into the unknown. And those often bump up against each other in conflict. So when we're experiencing an internal conflict or like that resistance, or we feel paralyzed by it, what's happening is that like we think that there is no resolution or compromise that can be come to within these parts. If we see it as very either or, black or white, we can either do this one safe option or do this one unsafe option, and to try to decide between the two is impossible. So in my experience, the best thing to do in that kind of either or situation is to examine what each of these things are standing for. Like, what are each of these parts desiring? And then in true collaboration, what happens is that both parties give up the thing they want in order to come together to create something that's even better than either could imagine. So it's not a compromise where one person gets less or each person gets less than what they desired. Both get 100% of what they desired and more. So in a negotiation between parts, what it looks like is looking at, okay, informing like, okay, this part is like my little inner girl, and what does she want? She wants to play, and she wants to be reassured that she's safe, and she wants to explore. And then there's like grown-up me who like wants to take care of the bills and wants to be responsible. So like letting them come together and talk about what could be some place in the middle where all of these things could work really well. Okay, what if when I'm paying my bills, I put on my favorite song ever and I put on a tutu, and in between every payment, I jump around and dance around and like do a little celebration. That way, like both are getting satisfied. I can play and work at the same time, something like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good trick for anybody who's listening. And it's also something like there's been a lot of research on that. So I just wanted to bring it up, and thank you for sharing it, because it's an amazing method, I guess.
You're so welcome. I think one other thing I do want to mention as well is that a lot of resistance is like mind chatter. Like we experience it as like this kind of looping thing in our head. And what that is really an indicator of is something is not right in our physical body. Story follows state. So like the story that's happening in our head is like a reflection of what's happening in our physical body. So if you check in with your physical body and take care of your nervous system, so doing things like taking really long deep breaths and going for a walk, or like laying in the grass and like looking at the sky for a little while, or taking a shower, or dancing, or shaking your body, or doing some tapping, those kinds of things can dramatically reduce the amount of noise that's happening in your head, so that you can take care of that in a more positive, effective way.
Yeah, very valuable tips.
And I'm sure some of this is things that you teach your coaches and also in your Inner Edge 10-week program. So could you just get into that program, why you created that, what can it offer to the interested party, and also what work do you do with coaches?
For sure. So I have two branches of my business right now. One is like the personal development branch, which is like the Inner Edge, and one is a personal development through sexuality branch, which is just like a more specific version of that. And so inside the Inner Edge, the reason why I created that program is because I saw this need in the industry for support for coaches who are like overworked and overstressed and like running up against these like mental blocks and limiting beliefs in their business. And it was dramatically affecting the ability to serve clients effectively. And a lot of them are not trauma informed. And so they didn't have an understanding of how to work with a client in a way that would help them through their emotional blocks and through their difficulties. And so the program was built as a way to be experiential for the coach to go through these different healing modalities and these different methods for creating transformation in their own lives, while also giving them those tools to support their clients. So it was like, it's built to be an experiential program where you get the personal development work. And then also inside of the program, there's practices involved where the coaches are coaching each other, and they're doing these like longer development days so that they can take those tools and go back to their clients with them too.
Absolutely. And like, as we talked about earlier, it starts with you. In order to coach someone else, you have to be living that by example yourself.
Yeah, like you can only support someone to the degree to which you are supported. You can really only help and serve someone to the degree to which you are served and filled up. And to be actually effective with any tool, it's like it requires an embodiment of that tool as well. Being and sharing is like 1,000 times more effective than like telling and informing as any strategy to support a client. And then the sexuality branch is a really exciting area for me now to be supporting my coaches in as well, because there's some of that inside of the Inner Edge, because sexuality and sensuality is an important branch of like personal development. And then I just like double clicked on that because it was super interesting to me. And I've had my own like incredible journey with my sexual expression, and then expanded that into a program called the Sacred Slut. And that program serves coaches in allowing them to, one, experience safety in their sex life, understand how to talk about boundaries and consent, and empower them to speak up for what they want, and encourage them to feel at home in their bodies and be able to take all the confidence that comes from that and then pour that out into the world. Because like that area, like sex is the most intimate and the most vulnerable space that someone can be in my opinion, because you're literally naked. And it also is a really clear reflection of any space that you have vulnerabilities or insecurities or limiting beliefs. And I found that when I can make 1 degree of progress in that area for a coach, the rest of their life is like magnificent compared to like the degree of progress that's made there. So that's been something that's also been amazing for me.
Yeah, I guess it kind of makes sense if you think of the root chakra like being our stable ground for safety. So you kind of need that foundation to build on. You need to feel safe within yourself first. It definitely grabbed my attention when I saw like on your Instagram sacred slut. I was like, I want to talk to this person. I want to know, what is a sacred slut to you? How do you describe that?
Thank you for asking that. So there's so much shame around sex because of religion, because of media, and the way that sex is portrayed and the way that pleasure is portrayed as well. And so for me, it's like this reclamation of this word that carries so much like pain and shame and suffering. And it's like an understanding that like sex is the most sacred space that exists for you too. Like it's vulnerable, it's intimate, it's like such a reflection of your inner world, and just giving it the respect that it deserves and the honoring that it deserves, and infusing this space that's like traditionally very surface level with this level of sacredness and this level of spirituality allows it to be a vehicle for deep personal transformation. And that's like what my take on it is like, this is just another lens for you to grow if you want it to be.
Yeah, I love that. It's like the
Can you,
tantric arts, but it's like you put it in a term that's more like it grabs your attention. I like it.
So for us to understand this a bit more, can you kind of talk about where your blockages were and where the walls you had up in terms of your sexuality, and how did you set yourself free, and what does that freedom look like for you now?
Totally. So like with my sexuality, I shared a little bit briefly earlier that like my first experience with sex was non-consensual and I was molested. And after that, I really used sex for validation and approval and not for pleasure. Like it was really this space where I was like, this is not for me. It's like very performative and just like sucks mostly. And it was just like something that I felt like I had to do to get people to love me. And that went on for a really long time. And I was also, a lot of my blockages around sex were related to my insecurities in my body too. Like I was very disconnected from my body and could never imagine a world in which I could experience pleasure in my physical body. And so I would say about the time that I moved to Austin, I had been in a couple more like loving relationships which were much more healthy than the ones I'd been in the past. And the sex was better, but it was, again, just like still not quite what I just knew there was something more available there. And I was also very afraid of going there. And I met a couple friends in Austin that were deep into sex coaching and spiritual sex and like using it in a really healthy way, and also gaining a lot of pleasure and empowerment from that. And they just blew my mind, like opened my eyes to a world that I didn't even know existed. And so I was just like, okay, this is the next level for me. Like I have a lot of other things really on lock and really figured out, but like sex is like still a block for me. And so I started taking courses. I did some Tantra courses, some BDSM courses, and started practicing these techniques. And for the first time ever, I experienced feeling safe in sex, like to really be able to be in my body and to really relax into myself. And I was like, oh, this is
Yeah.
everything. Like this ability to be intimate with a person and with myself alone, like doesn't even matter if it's with someone or with myself. Like I can experience that depth of pleasure and belonging and home in myself. And it was just like, the more and more that I got into it, I was like, this is another thing that I need to give to people. Like every time I've got like, it's always been like that for me, where like I've gained like this like deep sense of like belonging and love and like knowledge, and I'm like, okay, I gotta find a way to like give this feeling to someone else too. So that's been where it's come from for me.
That's amazing. Another reminder that it's because you like it's where you come from, and how you got here is just, it's so inspiring, really. And I love how you're so passionate about sharing that.
Thank you. It's so interesting because I don't know another way to do the human thing. Like for me, it's like just always been that. Both my parents were teachers, and I just grew up around understanding that like knowledge is meant to be shared. Like it's meant to be gained and then shared with people. And I've always just been in that supporter role and encourager role and teacher role my entire life. And it just feels so natural and important in my being.
Yeah. Yeah.
You are so able to generously share today, because of many that have shared with you who have came before you. And you mentioned some of these, your therapist, Eckhart Tolle, the creator of internal family systems, and just many teachers along the way. So can you take a moment to acknowledge some of the key mentors and helpers you've had on your journey? Who were they, and what were your main takeaways that you've incorporated from them into your being?
Oh, I love this question. Okay, so my first really powerful teacher was Eckhart Tolle. What I learned from him was the power of being present in this moment, and the power of like the more you can be here, there's nothing else that matters. Like that is the most important thing, and being present to whatever is arising and being creative with the present moment was magnificent for me. And then after that, my mentor, Jean, who was my artist mentor and taught me how to paint. And he also taught me just how freeing it is to just do whatever the fuck you want, because it doesn't actually matter. We're spinning on a rock in the middle of outer space, and our life are a blink of an eye. It doesn't fucking matter. And he was like, do whatever you want, dude. Like you're cool. And that for me was so critical and so important. Oh my God. My mentor, Annie Lala, was my first relationship coach, and I've been working with her for almost 4 years as well. And she's taught me so much about taking care of myself. Like that in relationships, in every relationship that you have, how you are being treated is a reflection of how you are caring for yourself. It's a perfect mirror for that. And just like, especially how I treat my inner child, and seeing that I was abusing her and like hurting her, and just becoming aware of that and seeing that reflected in other people, and then seeing now how well I take care of her being reflected back from other people. That was just like, oh, huge. She has taught me honestly the most of any person I've ever worked with. So I have like millions of lessons from her, but that one feels most present for me right now. Then I'll mention one more really important author for me, and that's Michael Singer. He wrote the book, The Surrender Experiment, and actually it's right here. The other one is The Untethered Soul. I'm never not reading this book. Like this book is constantly in rotation. I read from it almost every day. And what I've learned from that book is really just that you actually don't need to do anything. Like there's no doing that needs to be happening for you at any point in time. Everything is taken care of for you if you just relax into what's present, again, like just surrendering to like the way that life wants to take you. And then it's not, and surrender is not an act of like waving a white flag and giving up. It's like an active choosing to allow life to happen in front of you and to be at peace no matter what's going on. To choose that like what's here is perfect and beautiful, and fascinating. Like you can just sit and watch a tree and be like, holy fuck, look at this thing that's going on out here. What? It took 16.8 billion years for the earth to arrange itself exactly in this configuration, and it'll never happen again, and I will never happen again, and I'm the only one that will ever observe it like this, and to just treat it so preciously and to be present to it and surrender to whatever it brings, and also meet it with the enthusiasm of a lover, and to meet it with the care and honoring that it deserves. And yeah, he's just incredible. That's my short list.
So much wisdom shared.
Yeah, I haven't read The Untethered Soul, but from that little bit you shared, amazing reminders on how to really enjoy life and walk through without so much hassle.
Yeah, without resistance. I mean, resistance is something that we talked about earlier, and like it's like you can either choose to like swim upstream all the time with life, fight and claw and like try to grasp for something that you're attached to in the future. You plant your flag in some future vision, and then you have to like struggle to get there. And I think that's just so romanticized as like the only way to be successful. And I think there's such a more feminine, like an easier, more feminine approach that you can take to life, where you're just like, this is beautiful, and I'm going to choose to like be honorable with this gift that I've been given and allow it to just flow in the way that it wants to. I can swim downstream with life and like be continuing to swim and be active in it, but not fighting what's going on. Because so much of it's out of our, like most of it's not in your control anyway.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Why cause more internal chaos?
So true.
And undoubtedly, especially when we take on a new way of being, is fear. Fear often arises. What has been your relationship with fear on your journey? What has that looked like, and how do you now use fear as an ally?
Oh my gosh, I'm still afraid. I mean, I don't think that goes away. I think that like moments when I've been most afraid are like times when I thought that no one was coming to help me, or that I was alone, like that, I was going to end up alone, like taking some risk would leave me abandoned, or sharing myself vulnerably would mean I was rejected. I think those were like the biggest like fears that I've overcome, and still I'm working to overcome. Like, I mean, that's still something that is like present. And like my relationship to fear is like just more curious now, instead of resistant to it or feeling like I have to overcome or fight it. It's like when fear comes up for me now, I'm not perfect in this. Like, I don't think anyone is. Like, sometimes I like let the fear take me down for like a day, or like, I mean, even last weekend I got into like some weird thought loops and just like sat in a hammock and just like was in a super dark place in my head for a couple, like 20 minutes. And it's like when the fear comes up, most of the time it's like examining it with curiosity and being like, actually, like, what is it that I'm afraid of here? How can I reassure myself that actually I'm under no threat and I'm safe? What is it that I'm trying to defend? What am I trying to protect here? And usually I feel fear as like a closing of my heart. It's like I feel it constrict inside of me and a tightness in my chest and a wanting to run away and hide. And so my best strategy for like working on that or experiencing that is like really being with my heart space and just breathing. And also like I do that closing my eyes, and then I look around my environment, like really using my head to like swivel around and look behind me and like get present to the fact that actually nothing's wrong. Nothing's happening here. Everything's totally fine. If something really bad was happening, I would just be handling it if it was really a problem. And so
it's crazy.
Yeah.
The things we make up inside our mind, it's so true. But doing that work with ours is so worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like not to avoid fear, right? Like to know that it's just like also an indicator that you're pushing an edge maybe for yourself. And like I see that as a very positive thing. Like I know like if I feel afraid or I feel fear come up, it's like, oh, like look at that. Like look at me like doing something that is scary. Look at me like
Yeah.
doing a thing that's an edge for me. And it's like
Mhm.
riding that edge between I'm not going to dive into something that's traumatizing, but I'm going to ride the line of like I want to be a little afraid of the things that I'm doing in my life because it means I'm expanding into something uncomfortable.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And for a listener that has really resonated with something that you said of some of the wisdom you shared, but are still feeling that fear, feeling stuck, what advice would you give them to move them forward?
Take a deep breath first, and then another one, and then another one, and then another one. Take another deep breath and just wait. Just be with that fear. I think like when we, a lot of times when we feel fear or discomfort come up, we rush to try to fix it or to try to do something that will make us not feel afraid anymore. And sometimes we'll even take action that feels like we're doing something, but it's really just a more avoidance of fear. So
Mm.
if you feel stuck, then be fucking stuck for a little while. It's okay to be stuck. It's okay to be afraid. And like if you wait and you just be patient with yourself and like let yourself feel afraid and stuck for a little while and don't invalidate that feeling or make it wrong, eventually the right path will emerge for you if you're just
Mm.
calm and patient and like really be with that. And and even if you don't know what to do exactly, just your intuition knows, so quiet yourself and just be with yourself and that'll open up.
Mhm.
I love that. That was probably one of the most compassionate um take on this question. Just like it's okay to be scared. Like just it's fine. Just be scared for a moment. And it's so true because if you're looking at that inner child, it's what do you want to tell them if they're like scared to do something? You don't want to push them off the cliff and be
Totally.
traumatized.
No.
Yeah. So it's a very compassionate approach, and I love that. It feels like it's that sounds like it would be rooted in love. Like just be with it. It's okay.
Yeah, it is okay.
Mhm.
Like you're not going to be afraid forever.
Yeah.
And
At some point you realize, yeah. Hmm.
and through all the highs and lows that is this journey of life, what would you feel is the greatest life lesson that you've learned thus far that you feel called in the here and now to share with us?
Oh, all right, hold on. um hmm. Don't take yourself so seriously. I think that's the main one. It's like I think that like bringing lightness and humor into any space allows it to be a little less hard. So like now when I'm in a space of like anxious thought or whatever, I'm just like, "Ah, you're so cute. Look at you trying to ruin your life. That's adorable." Or like, you know, I call one of my voices my inner bimbo voice. I'm like, oh, look at inner bimbo trying to stir up drama. How funny. So like bringing, I do a lot of like really deep, intense work with people. And sometimes what it calls for is the chicken dance. Sometimes what it calls for is just shaking around and looking like a crazy person and making funny faces and noises. And yeah, I mean that's what I feel called to share now is like don't take yourself too seriously. I was gonna say a serious thing, but then I was like, you are not serious. It's totally fine.
Like another
You,
voice came through. I'm
yeah,
like, so
another voice was
loud
like,
a little higher.
it was like I wanted to, it was so funny, this inner thing where I wanted to say something that really sounded like meaningful and important. Like you always, like the first thing that came in was like you always have a choice. But then I was like, I do have a choice. And fuck it, I don't have to say something that's very deep and profound. Don't take it seriously. And then I was like, that's probably the thing I should share.
Yeah, yeah.
Beautiful. I love the share. I love the share, that share. And to close every episode, we ask each guest a final two questions, and we're at that point. And the first one comes to you now, and that is in 3 words. How would you describe the experience you were having on this earth?
Confusing, joyful, and fucking epic. That was 4. Yeah.
We'll take those 4. And the final question, we played around with time. We visited the past. We examined your origin stories. Now I'm going to fast forward us into the future. And we're going to be alongside an 85-year-old Hannah. Who is that 85-year-old Hannah? Where are you? Who are you surrounded by? What are you doing? And what is the legacy that you've left here on your time?
Dude, she's a wild old lady. She has lived an incredible life that she could have never expected. And the legacy is just one that people go to her funeral and they say, she made me feel love. She was so loving to me and inspired me to feel more love for myself.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like a beautiful woman. And I'd like you just to stay with her a moment longer. I want you to feel her in your heart. And I'm going to bring us back. I'm going to bring us back to the infinite now, the present moment. And then 85-year-old Hannah, she sends you a message. What does she share with you?
You're doing great. You're doing incredible. I'm so proud of you. And you have more ahead of you than you can even imagine, so buckle up. It's not over.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that share and for being you and for showing up in this conversation and always, Hannah.
Thank you so much for having me, Derek and Bianca. I appreciate you both.
I appreciate you. And I appreciate you, Bianca. Closing words to you.
Well, oh my God. I think what comes through a lot for me in this conversation is the value that I see in experiencing the polarities, because he came from such a place of really experiencing the difficulties and actually coming out on the other side, and with that gift that you're able to provide to people. So I think you sharing this is a reminder to anybody listening that if they are in that space right now, it's worth it, because the extent to which you know something, you know the polar opposite as well, and you show that to us just with your story and how you be. So thank you for sharing yourself with us today and with the listeners. And yeah, much gratitude and love to you, and maybe we'll meet in Austin someday, who knows.
I hope so.
And for people wanting to connect with Hannah, they can find her on Instagram at Hannah Deindorfer or at hannahdeindorfer.com. Anywhere else they can find you, Hannah, as we close this conversation?
Yeah, Instagram's the main place. Like, what I recommend is, like, I do a free hour-long coaching call for my community every Friday. So if you want to, like, come and just, like, interact with me and, like, say hi and get some free wisdom and coaching, like, that's my space where I'm most frequent. So come and talk to me and hang out.
Beautiful invitation. And the final way we wrap all conversation, we bring it in for digital fist bump in the winner circle. A choice, always ours. Thank you. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Bianca.
Thank you.